Let you start with some quotes that we collected in the cluster sessions.
Thank you very much indeed. First of all, I'd just like to thank all of the panelists in both the plenaries and the individual breakout sessions for their very rich contributions. Unfortunately, we were only able to select a very small number of them. A couple that particularly struck a chord with me. Skill choices are career choices. I think all our discussions have been about the fact that the future of work requires the skill shortage to be bridged, and indeed people with the appropriate skills are likely to have a very successful career, perhaps involving moving from job to job, not the job for life, but the right skills are perhaps the best way of future-proofing one's career chances for at least the medium term and some way into the future. And perhaps linked with that, the growing emphasis on skills, soft skills and transversal skills. Perhaps at the same time, the classic link between education attainment and employability is potentially weakening. Again, a very interesting discussion in the cluster I was observing, which was looking at the issue that perhaps a focus on traditional educational qualifications without informing those choices by the kind of skills and employability outcomes can mean that some people with quite high levels of educational attainment are unfortunately not in a position they would have hoped to have been on entering the labour market. So thank you. Leah, I gather you have a couple of quotes you wanted to discuss with us as well.
Yes, I think that these two, again, quite connected. The aim is not to have differences between types of upskilling, reskilling, but to have the acceptance from the labor market. Speaks a little bit about how do we see training and how do we evaluate education when preparing to the labor market, and how we should consider different ways of education. So, for example, one answers coming from the European Commission are micro-credentials. And these are ways to capture small portions of learning. So they're not substituting a whole path of education like we can think about in schools or university, but they should be evaluated when entering to the job market. And we can go to the next slide. And I think we both had an insight about digitalization. I bring from Cluster B this quote about the fact that digitalization is not a matter of the future. It's happening right now in the present. And unfortunately, we're lacking people with the right skills to work on this. So we have a lot of shortage in terms of that skill. Eamon, back to you with this wonderful quote.
Thank you very much, Leah. Context here was a discussion in, again, Cluster A, looking at the fact that digital skills are really now pervasive across all areas of the labour market, and sectors which one would not traditionally associate with digital skills are now very heavily dependent upon them. And we particularly consider the construction sector. Obviously, one of the key requirements of achieving the kind of green transition and a sustainable economy and environment generally is much better kind of housing in terms of the carbon footprint from housing and ensuring houses are energy efficient. And all of the work to actually try and adapt houses to meet that kind of standard now requires digital kind of planning, lots of use of computer-aided technology. So a sector that one didn't traditionally associate with perhaps digital skills really depends on IT. And to meet the construction sector shortages, which are quite profound at the moment, we need people with digital skills to train to deliver those jobs. Thank you very much. Can we have the next slide, please? This was an interesting kind of quote from a discussion about why perhaps are there sometimes some issues in skills development and maybe some gaps in the required provision and a lack of joined up support to ensure individuals can attain the skills required to access all of the jobs which are still exhibiting shortages. And the view was that in every member state, there are often split responsibilities between stakeholders, different government departments, public and private agencies, who are all perhaps owners of a piece of the jigsaw in terms of providing effective skills policy, but there needs to be ownership by all required stakeholders to make sure that skills development isn't an orphan and it can actually be developed in a cohesive and cross-cutting way. And over to you, Leah, for the final quote.
Yes, thank you. I think that collaboration and sharing was part of Cluster B as well. Many people talked about how important it is for different stakeholders to actually share best practices and be involved together in thinking about shortages, but also imagining future possibilities. And one collaboration which is particularly important is the one between industry and education that cannot just go ahead and work on parallel lines while in the end they will meet for sure. And in speaking about collaboration and speaking about sharing, I think many people actually appreciated moments like this one, an event like this conference, because this is one of the main moments that the stakeholders in the employment services can actually meet, speak, share best practices. So I think it's a really good message as well for us to know that we have to keep on working together on that. So it requires everyone.
Thank you very much, Lit. So hopefully we'll now be in a position to perhaps look at the results of our last poll. And hopefully we'll get that up on the screen very shortly. So interestingly, how optimistic are people about the future of Europe in terms of meeting the labour market needs in their own particular country over the next 10 years? I think it's encouraging that a majority of people are looking as if they are somewhat optimistic. It's a very uncertain agenda. Things that we could not have predicted 2 years ago have happened in a very significant way. There will no doubt be other extremely unforeseen events emerging, but with, I think, a reflection on all of the excellent insights in the first day of our conference, lots of examples of very good approaches to building resilience, to deal with the perhaps uncertainty, behind the view that we can't be absolutely optimistic about dealing with future skills needs, and lots of discussion and interventions and good practices about what's happening already to meet the needs of the future labour market. And perhaps after tomorrow, when we've got a very interesting look at how we can improve the attractiveness of shortage sectors and also trying to access the social capital from the many currently long-term unemployed and inactive people, we may get people being more optimistic at the end of day 2 than even they are now, but encouraging that there is a note of optimism after a very interesting day's discussion. Thank you very much.
We have a comment in the chat from Niels saying that PES employees usually are optimistic people. So I think we're happy to be in an optimistic environment. Thank you so much, Eamon. First of all, it was a pleasure being here and listening to all of you, all the moderators and all the speakers that we had today. We will do a formal thanking tomorrow because this is not the end of the conference. We have a day tomorrow. So if we can have a glimpse at the program of tomorrow, I can remind everyone about the timings and about what is expected to happen. So we will start at 9 a.m. Central European time with an opening session. Then we will have our third high-level panel with the topic of promoting social and fair employment. And then again, we will divide into clusters for discussions and to workshops. And of course, at the end, we will have a closing session. The conference will end at 1:30 p.m. Central European time. I invite all of you to keep on and engage with us also after this day is over. And if any thoughts come between today and tomorrow, then please share them with us tomorrow as we join together. Again, thank you everyone for being here. I hope I didn't forget anything that I need to communicate for tomorrow, but I think it's good. Chiara is nodding for yes. So again, thank you very much. Thank you, Eamon, for company and for being here. See you tomorrow.